Hello everyone. Let's move on to our next topic in our subject of MPMC. So the next topic that we are going to learn is Assembly Language Program in your chapter Introduction. So in this chapter, in this topic, we are going to dwell into what is Assembly Language Program, how it is structured, what are the different elements in your assembly language program, and how this assembly language program is executed by your system in order to provide an output to the user. So students, your assembly language program or assembly language programming is nothing but a sequence of assembly language statements. How you have in your high level language program, they are basically formed of human readable, human understandable statements, right? And in together we call it a program. Like you can see C program, Python program, Scala program. So similarly, what is an assembly language program? It is a sequence of assembly language statements. When we take it collectively, it is known as assembly language program. So in assembly language program, this sequence of statements, each statement contains a mnemonic. And this mnemonic in turn consists of letters which suggest or which gives an indication of certain operations to be performed. Each mnemonic is associated with some kind of operation. And when we provide that mnemonic in your assembly language program, interpreter interprets that mnemonic as an operation which is to be performed. Like students, I have an example for you all over here. So here it is an instruction, that is a statement. So statement is formed of a mnemonics. So first mnemonic is INC and second is SI. So what this instruction basically states is, here INC means your incrementation operation and SI means your source index register. So this particular statement, that is instruction in assembly language program, it states that the source index register has to be incremented by 1. So INC here, it is a mnemonic for increment and SI is a mnemonic for source index register. So when you will be writing the code, you will be writing it using mnemonics. And at the end, interpreter will interpret that INC as incrementation operation and SI as your source index register. And that is how it will increment your source index register by 1. So this is how your statement is interpreted. Now let's go ahead and we'll see the format of your assembly language instruction. So the format is very simple. As you can see on your screen, it can have 2 or multiple elements. So first element is obviously the opcode, which is the operation to be performed. Opcode is a mnemonic for an operation to be performed. And later there can be one or more operands. Okay, so you can have one operation, that is opcode, and you can have one or many operands in your AL instruction. This operand is nothing but the data which is required for the operation, the data, basic data on which the operation will be going to perform. So this is how your AL instruction is formatted. First comes always the opcode, which is an operation, and next it is an operand based on which the operation will be performed. Alright. Now this operand, they can specify different things. So they can specify immediate data, that is the actual data on which we will perform the operation. Or it can specify the address, that means we are going to specify the address where the data is located. Or it can specify the data which is there in the register. So your operand can be three things. Operand can be an immediate data, which is the raw format of the data, raw data with which you want to perform the operation. It can be an address or the memory location where the data resides, or it can be a data which is there present in the register. Now, as you can see, students, there is an example which is provided for you all, which is MOV SI, 0200H. So over here, as you can see, it has two operands and one opcode. Opcode is MOV, which is move. That is a moving operation. Here SI, it states register, which is the third specification, that is data in the register. And comma, the another operand, it states the data that is to be moved to the source index register. So over here your operand has specified the data in the register and the immediate data. So as you can see, this is a simple example just to tell you all how the operand can specify different types of data, that is immediate data, address, or the data in the register. So this is how the format of your assembly language instruction is structured. Okay, next students, we shall learn about different development tools which are required for your assembly language programming. In order to create your assembly language and finally execute and provide output from the assembly language program, there are different development tools which are needed to perform this entire function. And we'll see each of these development tools in detail. So the first development tool is the editor. So an editor is basically a program which allows to create a file which will contain your assembly language statements. That means editor is basically a functionality. It is a software with which you can create a file which will have your assembly language program. Like in your Linux, we have gedit, text editor, or on Windows, you have Notepad++, and so on. So these are basically editors which will allow you to write in and create an assembly language program file. Second development tool is an assembler. So assembler is a program which translates an assembly language program into machine language program. Obviously, when it is finally interpreted by your system, it cannot be interpreted as the mnemonics, as the assembly language, right? Every time any code has to be decomposed in the form of raw bits so as the machine can understand that program. So over here, assembler is a software. It is a functionality which will translate your assembly language statements into machine language, which is ones and zeros. Third development tool which is necessary is a locator. Locator is a program or functionality which will provide a specific memory address for the machine code or the program. So every time when the machine code has to be loaded into the memory, locator is the one which will assign the address to that program. Without assigning address to the particular program, you cannot execute it. First, you need to provide a locator, that is the memory address to that particular program. So that is the job of locator. Locator will assign a specific memory address for your machine code of the program. The next development tool, students, is the loader. Now locator is used to give a specific memory address to your machine code. And loader, it is a program which finally loads your object code into the memory location which is provided by your locator. So the loader, it can accept different types of programs. Like it can accept an absolute, which is a fixed program, or it can accept reallocatable program. So loader is a functionality which will basically take your object code and will load in the memory location which is specified by the locator. So that is the job of the loader development tool. Next tool after loader is your linker program. So linker program, it links smaller programs together in the form of large program. So basically all the subroutines, they are linked together as a main program by your linker. Your program can have multiple functions which are called at multiple times, which are defined and declared at multiple times, right? So linker is a program which will finally club these small units into a main standalone huge program. So that is the job of linker, which is used to link all the subroutines as a main program. The next development tool is your debugger. So you all know what a debugger is used for. Debugger, it allows the user to basically test and debug your program. So that is the job of debugger. Next development tool is emulator. So emulator is over here. It is a mixture of your software and hardware. So emulator, it is used to test your program, to debug your software, that is program, and finally provide an output to your external system. That is the job of your emulator. Testing, debugging, and finally providing an output to your system. So debugger is basically another unit in your emulator. So students, these are the 7 development tools which are required for assembly language programming. That is editor, assembler, locator, loader, linker, debugger, and emulator. So you'll have to remember and understand the job and the functionality of each development tool over here. So this is how students your assembly language program is structured and different tools which are necessary for your assembly language program. Now this knowledge is very necessary so that we can start our programming in next sessions. Alright. Now students, let's move on to our next topic for today, which is types of buses. Now as I have told you, as we have seen in previous class, the microprocessor, it communicates with the microcomputer using something known as a system bus. And we have learned already that system bus is nothing but a collection of different buses. So we will see what are the types of buses which collectively forms your system bus. So there are 4 types of buses which are used in your microcomputer, which is address bus, data bus, control bus, and tri-state bus. And all these buses collectively form your system bus in your microcomputer, which connects basically other devices with your microprocessor. Now we will see each bus in detail and we will see the functionality of each bus in your microcomputer. So first type of bus in your system bus is a address bus. So address bus is basically a group of parallel lines. And these parallel lines are unidirectional in nature. That means the data flows or the content flows in only one direction. That is from microprocessor to different memory location or peripheral devices. And that is why it is known as unidirectional bus, because the data or the content, it flows from microprocessor to the memory location and peripheral devices and not vice versa. Address bus, it carries the address of the memory location or the peripheral device, and since it carries addresses of the memory location and peripheral devices, it is known as an address bus. Now the number of address lines or the size of the address bus, it basically determines the memory capacity and you can say IO capacity, that is input output capacity of your microprocessor. Like for an example, if the microprocessor has n address lines, say your microprocessor, it has n address lines, then it can have 2 raised to n memory location on IO devices. For an example, if your microprocessor, it has 16 address lines. So if your microprocessor has 16 address lines, then your processor will have memory capacity of 2 raised to 16, which is basically 64 KBs. So this is how your address lines determines the memory capacity and IO capacity of your microprocessor. If address lines are n, then your memory capacity is nothing but 2 raised to n. For example, if your address lines are 16, your memory capacity will be 2 raised to 16. So how this address bus is used by microprocessor? It is used by microprocessor for its read and write operation. Now consider the microprocessor wants to read a data from the memory or write to a data in the memory. So basically address bus will carry the address of the data on which the microprocessor wants to perform read or write function. And that is why it is unidirectional, because it carries the address from your microprocessor to your memory location or the peripheral devices which are attached. So this is how your address bus facilitates the transmission of addresses in your microprocessor. Type of bus is your data bus. Now over here in our microprocessor, data bus is parallel line bus, which is a bidirectional bus. So in bidirectional bus, the content goes in both the direction. It is received and sent from either of the directions. Now data bus, as the name suggests, it is mainly used to carry and transmit the data and the instructions in its raw format. Now though your data bus it is bidirectional, it can carry the data only in one direction at a time. Like consider if your microprocessor wants to perform a write operation, the data will flow from microprocessor to your memory or your output device, that is a peripheral device. But if the microprocessor wants to perform read operation, then the data will flow from the memory or an input device to your microprocessor. So at a time, at a particular operation, it can have the data transmission in one direction only. Though it is bidirectional, at an instant there can be only one direction transition at a time. When write function is to be performed, the data flows from microprocessor to the memory or your output device. When the read operation has to be performed, the data flows from memory to your input devices into the microprocessor. Now the main important point over here is that students, size of your data bus, it basically describes or predicts the size of your microprocessor. When we say that we are using 8-bit microprocessor or 16-bit microprocessor, we generally mean that our microprocessor has a data bus of 8 bits. That means if your microprocessor is 8-bit microprocessor, which states that your microprocessor has a data bus of width 8 bits. If your microprocessor is 16 bits, that means the size of the data bus or the width of the data bus is 16 bits. So this is how the size of the data bus depicts the size of the microprocessor. So students, this is how your data bus is structured in your system bus. It is bidirectional. It is used to carry the actual data and the instruction in its raw format. It can carry the data in both direction, but at a time it can carry data in only one direction. And most importantly, your size of the data bus, it depicts or represents the size of your microprocessor. Let's move on to the next bus and the third type of bus, which is control bus. Your control bus in your microprocessor is the most important type of bus. Now, just like how we have brain in our system, brain is basically a unit which controls each and every operation. So similarly, your control bus, it is the unit which tries to control the operation in your microprocessor. The control bus, it consists of the signals or the lines or the content which carries the control and timing signals which are given by microprocessor and vice versa. So control signals, they direct different units. That means it gives direction to various units on how to perform that basic operation. The timing signal, it is used to coordinate or you can say synchronize the operation that has to be performed. Now your microprocessor, it generates various control signals. After every operation there has to be, after and before every operation, there has to be certain control signals which has to be transmitted. And these are sent using your control bus. Like your memory read, your memory write, your interrupt, error, flex. So there are different types of control signal which has to be transmitted for each step of your operation so that you can perform that operation smoothly and accordingly. And those signals are transmitted by your control bus. Alright, and this is why your control bus is very important because it actually guides the basic operation of the instruction or your machine language program that is converted from your assembly language. So this is how the three important buses are structured. We will see the pictorial representation of the same. So students, you can see the three buses, which is your address bus, your control bus and your data bus. Now we will start from the address bus. These are your units, which is your CPU, that is your microprocessor, your memory unit, input output unit and output unit. So this is basically your input unit and this is your output unit, which is displayed over here as two different units for simplification. So address bus, as we have learned, it is a unidirectional bus. So the data, it flows from the microprocessor to your memory and IO devices. So since the data flows from the microprocessor, you can see there is an unidirectional flow from your CPU, that is microprocessor, to your address bus. And when the data has to be given from the microprocessor to different units, the transmission or the flow is from the address bus to the memory bus, from the address bus to your input device, and from the address bus to your output unit. So this is how address bus is used to transmit the addresses from your CPU to different memory location and IO devices. Next is your control bus. Now control bus is a bidirectional bus which is used to give the control signal for both, that is your microprocessor and different subunits. So this is why you can see there is a bidirectional bus which goes from control bus to each unit and from each unit to control bus. And the last bus is the data bus. So the data bus, it is again a bidirectional bus which is used to transmit your data and instruction. So from CPU, it is a bidirectional bus which goes from CPU to data bus and data bus to CPU and vice versa. Similarly for memory, now in input device, it is a unidirectional bus because the data comes from the input device and it goes to the memory and your CPU. And for your output unit, it is a unidirectional bus which goes from CPU and memory to your output devices. And this is why the data flow is from your bus to your output unit. So this is how our three buses are laid out. So basically how the operation is performed, like for example your read operation. So in first step, the microprocessor will place the address on your address bus. Now this address on the address bus, it will be decoded by some external logic function. And based on that, the memory location will be identified. Now once the memory location is identified, the address bus will send the memory location in that memory unit. After address bus sends the memory location, the microprocessor, that is CPU, it will send the memory read control signal to that memory location. So then comes the job of your control bus. So over here, control bus will carry the memory read control signal from the microprocessor to your memory location. Now when the signal is received, it activates the memory chips, means the area where the location is present, it is activated. And lastly, the contents from that memory location, they are placed on the data bus and then they are transmitted to the microprocessor. So this is how your basic read operation is performed using our three different buses. Last and a special type of a bus, students, is your tri-state bus. So tri-state bus, as the name suggests, students, it refers to three-state logic bus. So basically this tri-state bus, it has three states, that is logic 0, logic 1 and high impedance state. Logic 0 is false, logic 1 is true and high impedance. Now the interesting feature of this tri-state bus is that it has a third line. And that third line is called as an enable line. So whenever this line is activated, your device, that is your microprocessor, it functions like the ordinary logic device, which will perform the input and output function. But when the third line, that is your enable line, when it is disabled, the logic device, it goes into high impedance state. So high impedance state means what? It acts as if it is disconnected from the system. The more important function is that over here it uses the current which is required to perform logic 0 and logic 1 function. That is logic true and logic false function is performed using current. So students, your tri-state bus, it is very critical in order to maintain the proper functioning of your microprocessor. The tri-state bus is actually the bus which is used to drive the address bus and your data bus. So students, these are the different types of buses which are there present in your microcomputer, which works closely and interacts with your microprocessor. That is your data bus, your control bus, your address bus and your tri-state bus. So students, that is it for this session. If you have any queries, you can drop me a mail. Thank you for listening.